Welcome everyone to the Encompass Mental Health and Communication Series, Parenting Edition, Ask an Expert segment. My name is Teresa Goodwin. On behalf of the Encompass team, it's my pleasure to introduce Alyson Schafer. I am joined by my wonderful colleagues, Jen, Alana, and Louise. I don't see their cameras on, but I'm sure everyone can see their names. They're there. Alyson is a family counselor, parenting expert, and author of 3 best-selling books, including her favorite title, Honey, I Wrecked the Kids. She hosts the podcast Parenting the Adlerian Way and the TV show The Parenting Show. Alyson is also a guest expert on many media outlets, including the Marilyn Dennis Show and Global TV's The Morning Show. Alyson teaches, trains, and speaks about around the globe. She has recently been to Uruguay, Bulgaria, Ukraine, Switzerland, and Belgium. That's pretty amazing. You've traveled all over the place.
When we could travel.
Yeah, when we could, you're right. Thank you so much for coming today and sharing your expertise with everybody. Before we begin, we just want to cover off a few housekeeping items. So one is that we've purposely disabled everyone's cameras and microphones so that everybody can participate in an anonymous, confidential way. We will record the presentation and it will be hosted on the Encompas website to enable access for those who have missed it today. So they'll be able to go back and see it on the website, Alyson. It's all going to be recorded in there.
Great.
This is going to be a little bit different than we typically do. So typically what we do is we hold all of our questions till the end, and anybody that is seeing the presentation today that has any questions, if you could use the Q&A feature. But throughout the presentation today, we will be feeding some of those questions to our presenter. So a little bit different than we typically do. We will, Alyson, I will read out the questions for you, or Jen, Louise, and Alana at any time can pop in if they see a question that I'm missing as well. So you might see them pop in. Okay, for everybody, for the presenter, we would really like for you to show that you're out there and that you're hearing what she's saying. So you could, in the Q&A, if you want to put multiple A's, that is awesome. Or if you want to put multiple O's, that is a standing ovation. We will let Alyson know those as well as they come up. So with that, I'll turn things over to Alyson. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. And we were just saying before going live here that this is Bell Let's Talk Day. So how great that you make this available to your community to have access to somebody who can provide some expertise. And my expertise is in Adlerian parent education. So I have a clinical practice where I counsel families, and you can imagine since the pandemic that exploded. And so I've tried to be as helpful to families as I can be, but I do spend a lot of my time doing Q&As like this one today. I do a Facebook Live where I take questions. I have the podcast where I answer questions, because everybody has something going on. You have some hot spot in your family. You have something that you wish I could wave a magic wand and make go away tomorrow. So I'm going to be talking loosely about some of the things I've seen in my practice, some common burning issues for parents, but I really want to be here to sculpt this to what's going on for you, because I can use your issue to then expand and go back to theory. So instead of talking theory for 40 minutes and doing Q&A at the end, we're going to make this a more interactional presentation. So the pandemic really did change things for a lot of families, and maybe that will be my starting premise, which is to say that, when we look at human beings and what human beings need, first and foremost, in Adlerian psychology, we say that our primary directive is that we're a social creature. We're part of the social animal grouping, just like ants are in a colony, cows are in a herd, birds are in a flock. Humans are in families, and humans are in community, and kids are in schools. Those are all our little social institutions. And our number one imperative to know that we are safe and secure and mentally well is to feel our sense of belonging. And so the sense of community that sort of is like what we call the ironclad logic of social living, the give and take of social living. Think about the Amish who live in a community and they all run to help somebody whose barn has been burned down, and then they have a big barn raising. And if you're in community, you know that you're going to help your neighbor, because if you become in distress, they're going to run over and they're going to help you. And that's the feeling that gives us psychological security. And kids feel it, like I said, first at home, then in their classroom, then in the bigger community, and then we would hope out to the world. It generates that way. And one of our prime directive as parents is to help grow our children's social interest. Unfortunately, one of the maladies of modern parenting, modern society, North American style parenting, European style parenting, I would even go on to say that in modern times, we've gotten much more into uh, um, very fierce individualism. We have hierarchies. So we have, however you want to call it, the patriarch, the matriarch, colonialism, colonization. All of these things move us away from our natural state of what old traditional cultures used to be. And so we end up having a lot of problems with feeling our sense of belonging and feeling our place in the community, because now suddenly we're vying for position, and there's a scarcity kind of mentality. It didn't help then that when the pandemic came, we broke all of those abilities for our kids to find their community outside at school. So they didn't get their belonging in their social groups that are with their peers, in their friendships that they desperately need from a developmental point of view. And then we were stuck at home in lockdown together. Believe it or not, we're not meant, the nuclear family is an artificial 1950s creation that is not healthy. We're meant to live in longhouses. We're meant to have the aunties and the grandmas and the uncles who mentor us, so that we're handed off to many people, so that we're always in the care of somebody who loves us and is smiling, but we're not wearing down one person. So here we were in these little nuclear families trying to work and go to school and can't see our friends, and the tensions just went, and we saw this as increase in mental health issues, and we saw an increase in domestic violence, in Kids Help Phone saw a 300-fold increase in calls to their crisis line in the first month. Sick Kids Hospital said that their emergency pediatric psychiatric intake had more cutting, eating disorder, suicidality. They knew that, but they didn't know to what extent. And they didn't know how severe the presentation was going to be. Severe presentations, and starting much younger than they anticipated. So we definitely had a mental health crisis, and it's still ongoing. We're still not out of the woods. But we know that we got to make the best of our situation, and a lot of the parenting then can come into play around that. So our parenting is being tested right now, and if we thought we were kind of skidding by a little bit, we might have. But now things that might have been what I would say sort of pressure points in the foundation of our parenting. Under pressure, we might have seen some of those cracks. So you might have been able to manage your kids when you just had to get them out the door to school and kind of fight with them over homework and getting them to bed. But when you have them all day, you might realize I'm not the best disciplinarian, or I don't have the tools to deal with this. I don't want to be yelling all the time or threatening or bribing. And that is really a lot of what our traditional parenting toolbox has been. If we look back historically, we really did come from a cultural tradition that says, do as I say, not as I do. We want our kids to listen. And probably one of the number one presenting issues that a parent will come to me and says, how do I make my kid listen? So I don't know if you're getting like little hand claps in the little chat box there right now.
I am getting my kid to listen. A's, double A's, awesome.
How do I get my kid to listen? So let's start with answering that. And again, taking the burning problem and backfilling it with some of the theory. The problem is with the challenge of wanting our kids to just listen. If we really unpack that, it's really a different way of saying that I have an expectation that when I give you an order or a command, that you'll snap to it, that you'll listen and do as I say. And that really is describing obedience. I want an obedient child. And I know many of you are going, yes. I know on first blush, an obedient child sounds like a nice thing to have, because again, when you speak, they will listen and they'll do, and then you don't have misbehaviors and trouble with compliance and things. The downside of having an obedient child is that they stop using their internal ability to assess information, and they just turn their authority over to whatever authority figure is barking the commands. Yes, let's assume that parents are giving good commands. Sadly, and you probably know this from some of your line of work, the most likely person to hurt a child is actually their family members, their loved ones. So they're not to be trusted in all that way. And also then if you're giving blind trust to an authority figure, This is where perpetrators will look for obedient children and groom them into building that trust so that they keep their little secrets. And these kids are now prone to sexploitation. If they can make it through all of that, then they get to the adolescent years, and then you suddenly aren't the authority figure. It's going to be their peer group. And when they say, do you want to try vaping? Do you want, like, send me a snap of your bra, you and your bra? Obedient children are more likely to go along because they want to please that authority figure. So you lose power. This is not a good formula. The downsides are far too great. We don't want to go that route. Now, don't get me wrong. I work with families all the time. I'm a parent educator. I want kids that behave appropriately. I want kids who have table manners. I want kids who know they need to clean their room and put their plate in the dishwasher. I absolutely do. That's called socializing and training your child to join the social community at which they participate. But I don't want to do it through the avenue of our history, which is obedience. I want to aim for a different end goal. That end goal is raising a cooperative child. So that's a child who does what is required because it's the right thing to do. And their motivation is intrinsic, not out of fear of you punishing them or out of them trying to please you. So raising a cooperative child is different tools, different end game than an obedient child. So how do we get our kids to show through listening that they're going to cooperate with us? It really is a byproduct of two important fundamental features of your family environment and how you dynamically operate. So think about how you cooperate with your coworkers, with your spouse or your partner, with your neighbors. We get along with people who we feel close to, affiliated to, right? There's a bit of a connection there. So we want to have good relationships with our kids, build those bonds, build that commonality, have joint interests, those kinds of things. So we want to feel that piece of belonging in the family. What is it to be a Schafer? Or if you're in kindergarten, we're in the little bug room. What are we? If we're the butterflies, I'm part of the butterfly group. We want to feel this sense of affiliation and connection with our group, that belonging piece. And this is the part that maybe is a little harder for families, they need to feel that they're in a mutually respectful relationship, not one up, one down. This is about the hierarchy. It can't be the dictator and the oppressed. It can't be the one who's lording over, imposing rules, and people that are below them being subservient. When kids feel that, they don't want to get along. And think about that. You don't really want a child who is looking for a codependent relationship with somebody who is the puppet master and they're expected to be the puppet. That's not healthy mental living. So we can't parent that way. So we want to be mutual respect, two-directional respect. That doesn't mean that kids have the same voice as you in the family. I don't sit my 6-year-old down and say, look, you and I are social equals. You're part of this family. The mortgage is coming up for renewal. Should we go fixed rate or variable? That's a ridiculous question to ask a 6-year-old. So I'm not talking about that. But what I mean is that regardless of your age or competency, you're a human being and you're due to be treated respectfully just because you're a human. You're a human. So we need to find ways to do child discipline that stay within the confines of respectful treatment. That's what I'm talking about. And most of us don't have that tradition. So some of the ways that we might get a child to listen, first of all, if I say, hey, stop jumping on the couch, I'm going to give it a go. I'm going to say it once, but I'm not going to if they don't stop jumping on the couch, I'm not going to go, my kids are mean, my kids are horrible, why don't they listen to me, they're reprobate. I'm not going to make any judgment about it. I'm going to go, they're kids doing what kids do, which is they don't listen to words coming out of your mouth. They learn from what happens. That's the order. That's how they learn experientially. So don't rely on this. Rely on your actions. So if they're not supposed to jump on the couch, hey, can you guys stop jumping on the couch? Doesn't work. Now I'm going to reach into one of my positive discipline toolboxes and I'm going to think about how I might correct that behavior and teach them proper couch behavior. A very common one for this example would be using a logical consequence, right? Not what I say, but doing something. So a logical consequence, I'm going to use my little board here, and we're just using the example of the couch, but you could, got to get my marker. Hold on a second here. We could use this consequence for the tool of a consequence for a million different behaviors.
I'm just wondering, Alyson, because there is a question here that you
Yeah,
might be able to use that example for this
sure.
question,
Yeah.
because it kind of feeds into what you're talking about. So it is a member who says, I've noticed that our grandchildren's parents believe that the 6 and 4-year-olds should make decisions about eating sweets until they get sick, and that the kids have the capability to understand moderation and consequences. They give them snacks 1 hour before supper and wonder why they're not hungry. One parent agrees that they should be better managed, and the other has a free range chicken thought process. When our grandchildren are here, we use they use guidelines and problem solving when they experience any mood swings, and even the parents wonder why we have no issues with them.
Oh, well, there's so much to unpack in that one question. So, what I'm hearing a lot in that question is the difference in the parenting styles between the parents, and between the intergenerational with the parents. Notice that the grandparents are saying we don't have these issues when they're under our care. That's a really important thing to realize, in that behaviors have to be seen within the field in which they are happening. They are interactional patterns. So we have, if you want to just, yeah, I'm going to pull this up close so you can see it. So we have the grandparent and the child. And so the child behaves a certain way, goes for the snacks. The grandparent responds by saying, no snacks, dinner's coming too soon, or whatever might the example be, or whatever. And this interaction between the two becomes a pattern. This is why we call it dynamic psychology. We're looking at the interaction. Too often, if you go to a therapist, you're going to say, what's wrong with my kid? My kid misbehaves. Fix my kid, change my kid. That's not the target. In Adlerian psychology, we target the interaction, what's going on between. So when the grandparents are done, and then the parents are interacting with the child, when the child says, I want a snack, the parent says, sure, have at it. Different behaviors, different responses. The child acts differently. So how many times have we seen this, where the one parent can get the kids to go to bed and the other parent can't? Or the child does so wonderful at daycare, they'll say, oh yeah, they ate their chicken and their broccoli. And they go, they never eat chicken and broccoli at home. How did you get them to eat lunch? My kids never eat lunch. Or they'll, your child is so sweet and kind in the classroom. You're going, my kid's a holy terror at home. So behavior has to be understood in the field in which it occurs, with the interaction of the people that are observing, watching, or whatever. So you're having a different relationship with your grandkids than the parents, and the parents have some different parenting styles between them. You don't all have to be 100% consistent. We don't need the world to be, we don't have to create consistency in the responses between the people that your children interact with. So they can understand grandma is strict, mom is not, librarian is, loving, teacher is rigid. They need to learn that people come in different ways. They need to know that if I bug this kid, they're going to bite me because the tops of their ears turn red. They need to learn to read the room and figure it out. So you don't need to be consistent between you, but you do need to be consistent yourself. What makes a child have difficulties is when they're sitting on the school bus and they're like, I don't know if when I step off the bus, I'm going to get calm mommy or if I'm going to get erratic screaming mommy. Will she have been drinking in the afternoon and take it out on me, or is she going to have it together? So you need to be intrinsically consistent, but kids can figure out, and they do, and they play you off each other and whatever. If you want to get on the same page and see the problem the same and kind of get aligned, great. I'm not dissuading you, but I've seen too many families fight over how to parent the kids, and the parental conflict is bigger than them having a snack before dinner. You make a bigger problem than the one you're trying to solve by fighting about the problem. Don't fight in front of the kids. Have the conversation sidebar. The general rule is whoever starts the discipline finishes the discipline. So if one of them starts by saying you can't have that before snack time, I would say, well, you know what? Someone has spoken their piece. I guess we have to figure out an agreement on family snacks at another time. But in the moment, you have their back. You don't step in and say, hey, don't be like that. That's triangulating. So have their back. Then say, listen, let's talk about snacks. I don't think that's working. So it's fine to reassess rules, but have each other's backs in the moment. That's the better good. And so to your other question about the consequences, what we're trying to do here when I said we're socializing children, one of the ways that we socialize is that we want to tie freedoms to responsibility. If you're going to have the freedom, you need to take the responsibility with it. They go hand in hand. We're very good at giving children freedom. We are not good at giving them responsibility. If you want to ride your bike, you need to wear a helmet. If you aren't willing to wear the helmet, we lose our bike privileges. That's an example of a good consequence. So in this particular incident, they're putting together what's actually kind of a natural consequence, which is if you eat too much before dinner, you don't have an appetite for supper, right? So I might say to the child, hey, listen, I want to give you some opportunity to make some decisions for yourself, but you need to show me that if you'd like the freedom to pick your own snack and when you snack, you need to show me that you can be responsible enough to rein it in and still get the healthy foods that are going to be put before you at supper time. And if you have trouble with that, then I'll need to step in and give you more support around that skill, so that it's age appropriate, or not even so much age, but that they go hand in hand. Maybe you can't figure that out at 4, but maybe you will at 5. And maybe you didn't figure it out last month, but let's try it again next month. So where you can't manage, then we'll give you some age appropriate or developmentally appropriate support. But you got to keep adjusting because they keep growing, and you got to let them try again. So I hope that's helpful. So the example there of how to make a good consequence is, oh, my marker's getting too light here. I just want to make sure that, because what happens is a lot of times parents say they're doing a consequence and they're really just punishing. If you do an improperly implemented consequence, it's no longer non-punitive. So let's make sure we do them well. So what you're doing is, you are allowing the child to make choices. That's how they learn. They make choices, they try on behaviors, and then they see the outcomes of their choices. So this is why it's a decision tree, right? And you have to be uninvested in what your child picks. But you might say, for example, if you wear, I use the bike example, helmet. If they choose to put the helmet on, then they get to ride the bike. No helmet. That's a choice. Don't wear your helmet. Don't use your safety equipment. No bike. I'm going to lock up the bike for a day. We'll try again tomorrow, or lock it up for a week, whatever it might be. No bike. Right? I'll just do a couple other quick ones. If you'd like to, if your hands are washed, then I know you're ready for supper. We need clean hands to come to the dinner table to eat supper. If you don't wash your hands, that's okay. That's a choice you can make too, but I don't put your dinner plate down till your hands are washed. I don't know what you'll do. This is your choice to make. I can't make you do anything. I can't make you listen, but I can say what I'm willing to do. I can't control you, but I can control the situation. And you have to be really nonplussed about which way they choose, because it's going to be the waiting for the no dinner coming to go like, hey, I don't think I like my choice. So what's important about this is the reason why it's called a logical consequence is because it has to be logical to the child. It has to be connected. It has to be related. Here's a punishment. If you wear your helmet, you can ride your bike. If I catch you not wearing a helmet, you don't get iPad time this afternoon. That's not related. You're basically saying to the kids, I have more power than you. I'm going to find something you like and I'm going to harsh your buzz. I'm going to make you unhappy. It's not related. They just think you're being mean, and it might work. It might work. They might wear the helmet next time, but you know what they're going to do? They're going to key your car, or they're going to wet their pants, or they're going to refuse to put their dish in the dishwasher. They'll make you pay for that punishment. They will do tit for tat in some other way. So it has to be related. And then the other mistake that parents make is they don't do consequences. They just threaten them. They'll just say, like, I swear to God, if you don't stay in your seat, we're going to leave the restaurant. I swear, if you keep getting up, we're going to leave. And then you never leave. You just talk, and you never follow through. So they stop listening to you. Or sometimes you leave, because you're mad at them or you're fed up. And other days you're there with a friend and you want to talk to her, so you threaten, but you don't. So they never know. Is it the first time, the third time, the 8th time? You end up being erratic. They can't put the pattern together. So you're being ineffective. So say it, mean it, follow through. And then follow through in a friendly way. follow through in a friendly way. So it's not like, well, if you would have eaten dinner, if you would have come to the table, if you wouldn't have had that snack, like the more you moralize and judge, it becomes interpersonal. So the minute that they know, and this is important, if they know that you want them to wear the helmet, if they know you want them to wash their hands, if they know that you want them to sit at the table and not get up and down, if they know that's what you want, then you'll get a power struggle where they will just pick the other option, not because they want the other option, they're hungry, they want to eat, but they will do it just to defy you.
Mm-hmm.
Just to defy you. It becomes a power struggle. So you've got to keep your consequences really non-plus. Just follow through. Don't threaten them. Say it once. Follow through. And then, yeah, they'll be disappointed. And you can say, I'm sorry you're disappointed. You got down from the table. I popped your plate away. You can try again next time. Leave it at that.
Mm-hmm. I do have another question, and it did come in a while ago, and you have answered different pieces of it, but I wanted to give you the full question, and it kind of goes on that defiant piece that you're talking about in the behavior changes within different environments. So the question is, I have an almost 7-year-old who is an angel at school and a major rule follower, but when she's at home, she often becomes very defiant. She argues, she yells, she blatantly disrespects us. We definitely started seeing it more when the pandemic began. I do believe if she could do better, she would. And she has expressed that sometimes she feels so angry, she just wants to break something. My question is, how do we deal with her outbursts? What are some strategies we can use? Or do we just walk away and disengage?
So great question. And, it's likely that what's happening is at school she is being, she's successfully found her place, and she has built a relationship with her peers and her teachers where she's seen in a good light. And then she comes home and she gets into discipline issues. There's maybe a sibling at home. So it's not uncommon. I have these props at my chair because I get asked these questions so many times that I knew to bring them. So hold on. So it's not uncommon when you have a real misbehaving problem child at home that they're kind of playing the role of the bad one. And notice I'm saying playing the role because it's a role, because at school she isn't. At school, she's the angel, the rule follower. She's being right. She's being successful. She's able to get the recognition she needs. So maybe there's somebody at home who is a threat to her, a sibling who seems to be preferred, a sibling who doesn't get into trouble, a sibling who isn't so explosive, can manage their emotions better. I don't know, just a thought for you there. But it could be just that what's ending up happening is at school, they have found a positive outlet for her to engage her need for a sense of autonomy and to express her power on the positive side of life. And at home, she might not be finding the positive application of empowerment at home. It's more difficult in the way that we discipline kids. So what I would suggest is notice, when you're looking for strategies, first is I'm going to tell you how to deal with the bloat once they happen. But what we really want to do is be preventative. Pay attention, keep a journal. This would be like the first piece of homework. If you were a counseling client of mine, I'd say get a little journal, and every time there's a blowout, I want you to rehash it, write it down. Tell me what happened, because I'm looking for common triggers. So some triggers for kids are being told no, transitions, using arbitrary authority over them, which you won't recognize as a parenting mishap, but they notice it. A sense of injustice or unfairness that comes up because of that arbitrariness. An example might be when they ask, can I have a cookie? And you say no. You are now the gatekeeper to the cookie, and you might be thinking in your mind, that's good parenting because it's too close to dinner. You already had, 3 popsicles in the afternoon. We're going to have dessert after supper. That's too much sugar for a day. But all they hear is, I ask you, you say no. You're the one that controls my life, and I hate that. I have no agency, and I'm going to get upset about it. So there's ways that we need to approach it to find out how we can not make these triggers for our kids. Once we get into these triggers, and let me tell you, kids here on average no 400 times a day. 400. Wow. Would you like to live in a relationship where you're told no 400 times a day? Now, part of it is, yeah, we have to have limits and boundaries, but there's also a bunch of ways to say no without using the word no that they become allergic to. Like you can say, yes, you can have a cookie. That's what we're having for dessert. Um, you know, a cookie, do you think that's a wise decision for you right before dinner? Like there's ways that there's things that we can do to not hit the trigger button. So let's find out what the triggers are. And then notice when we have explosive kids, we tend to be in these power dynamics that are like a power struggle, a tug of war. So when you're whatever's setting her off, the saying no, she didn't give an example in this particular book, but let's say it's the kid who's refusing to put their coat on to go to school or whatever. And you're saying, put your coat on. It's -23. We need a coat to go in the car. And the kid is saying, no, I don't want to put the coat on. And they need to wear it. And they're refusing to go along with you. So we get into this dynamic. And so if a kid loses, if we get insistent, and we have a lot of ways that we can conquer little kids, if they lose, then we often get the explosion. And that is a little bit of emotional payback for having made them do. They just lost a power struggle. So what I want to do is kind of catch that trigger and then find ways to disengage. I don't want to win, because if you win and dominate your children, they're going to try to dominate you because you're modeling. If you acquiesce, then you get more power struggles because they go, mom's a patsy, dad's a patsy, whatever. I can just walk all over them. Just dig your heels in until they cave and give you the cookie. I don't want that, because that's going to make them do that again. So this in between of disengaging, getting your wind out of their sail. So you're saying it at the end, you're saying, should I just walk away and ignore them? I don't think that's the best way to deal with a kid who's already activated. I want to help them co-regulate. I want to be able to rub their back and say, hey, I'm sorry. It looks like you're really disappointed in how things went. I'm sorry. That I want to give them some kind of active listening and comfort. I don't need to sit there for hours. I want to be able to say, you're allowed to be upset, and I'm also allowed to walk away from your storm. I don't need to be pulled into your drama. But I do want them to know that I love them, that I'm listening, that they feel felt, they feel heard, they feel supported. And then, give them some time to pull it back together, but you can only talk to them in a time of calm. So I'm more interested in the trigger and finding out in their world, the way they see life in the family, what was so distasteful that they had to lose their, themselves over it, and then get better at the preventative piece. So if some of you have an example of something that makes your kids blow up, in the case of the coat, I might just watch my language. Put your coat on is a command, and kids don't. That's servitude. They don't like commands. That's being ordered around. So you might put it in a question. You might say, hey, what do we need to keep ourselves warm for school today? I'm just looking at the TV. Can you look at my phone? Can you open up the weather app? What temperatures does it say? Ooh, -23. I don't know about you, but I'm putting on my coat and my scarf today. That's really cold. What are you going to wear today? What are you going to choose to keep yourself warm? Those are all empowering statements. Most kids like to look at her in the classroom. Now you're calling on her wisdom. You're asking her to contribute. You're asking her to make choices. That's all empowering things. Well, I'm going to wear my coat and a scarf too. You know your body. You know how to bundle up. Now you have the opportunity to turn a forcing compliance situation into winning cooperation and encouraging them to and showing them how brilliant they are. And that's what kids want. They want to feel good. Kids who feel good do good. Kids who feel bad do bad. So we got to start with more making them feel good, not more making them feel bad.
It sounds like I fell into a really bad trap this morning, because that coat situation happened in my house. Yeah. It did. It was really -12. And I'm like, get your coat on. You can't go outside. And I got but it's not cold out. It's -12. Get your coat on.
And what ends up, so notice the dynamic there. What happens is once you've established this power struggle, so notice this little red mark. In this case, the symbol of who's winning and who's losing is whether if the coat goes on, mom wins. If the coat stays off, the child wins. So what ends up happening is they'll be out there and they'll realize that it really is cold. Their whole motivation was for you not to control them and make them do. But now they're out there and they're freezing. They would rather die of frostbite than put their coat on, because it's now they're ego bound to defy you. So if they put their coat on, because it's how they keep warm, it's the right thing to do, they perceive it as, you conquered me. You were superior, I'm inferior. You're the puppet master, I was a puppet to your orders. So we can't, we have to really watch that all these things that our kids defy us on, won't brush their teeth, won't do their homework, won't make their bed. It's not really that they care about their bed or their homework or their teeth. They don't like being made to do. It is about servitude. So if you can come at it without triggering up those feelings of servitude, trying to win their cooperation instead of forcing their compliance, you're going to get the behaviors that you want.
Mhm. I'm wondering if you can maybe offer one of our members a little bit of your thoughts, kind of in what you're talking about. So he is saying that he ran into a parenting problem where they tried the traditional approach. His wife would do the day-to-day discipline, and then he was reserved as the thermonuclear option. It created a lot of fear of him being the father, and that has now created a lot of parenting challenges for him. Wondering if you can speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, I often hear that it creates sort of some sadness in the marriage too, because if you think about who the person who's coming in to kind of be the bad cop or the final, right there, you're sort of saying like, I can handle the kids up until this level, and then you come in and you give the hammer. So it says that that other parent is in a superior position. You're creating hierarchy in the family. You know, that wait till your father comes home, that means dad is superior to mom, that mom's ineffective, dad's more effective. And how's he effective? He's effective in a way that also erodes the relationship, that nuclear hard thing. So it's like, well, I want to have, I don't want to be the meanie all the time. How come you get to have all the fun with the kids and they don't like me, and now they don't open up to me and they don't want to do things with me? And so it hurts that relationship. It belittles mom, and I'm saying mom and dad, but it could be mom and mom, dad and dad. It's whoever's playing those roles, right? And it could be that the mom's actually the tough one and the dad's the pushover. So, you know, I don't mean to be making stereotypes at all here. But it hurts the relationship between the coupleship, and it hurts the relationship between the kids. So yeah, I would try to together sign up for a parenting class and look at some of these situations together to say, again, you don't have to do everything exactly the same, but if you see the problem the same, it's a big part of Adlerian psychology, is that we say there's no sense creating a digging through your parenting toolbox until you have a full understanding of what is actually going on. What is the child trying to do? How does the child benefit from this behavior? So it's more about having that case conceptualization and agreement, and then you're more likely, when you share some of those basic premises, that you can kind of work in your own creative way. Like, for example, humor. Some people are really good with humor. Some kids are good with humor. Other kids, if you use humor to diffuse a power struggle, they will think you're making fun of them and they will hate that. And some parents just like, I don't like being funny. It's not my natural way. So it's not like do it, like it's not prescriptive in like do exactly what Alyson says. It's about understand what's happening, understand some principles, and then have some freedom to let your authentic personality come through, and trust yourself to apply or create tools to deal with the situation.
We do have a question that came in a while ago. I'm going to pop back up to this question. Yeah. And it's kind of along the lines of that consequence too. I have an 18-year-old with ASD and ODD. He's currently enrolled in a trade college program. He has many challenges with anger in the past and currently. His girlfriend, he's very reliant on. She talked him into getting a credit card that he maxed out. He has no job. His dad and I paid it off because he was stressed out about it and was threatening to quit school to pay it off. We took the card, but he ran it up again. He's moved out because he doesn't like our rules. What do we do about the card?
So, you know, he's a young adult. You know, 18, he's able to live independently, starting to get himself sorted, and he's made some mistakes. And, you know, it's important as a parent that we make our homes a place where we can make safe mistakes. So his first mistake is he ran up the credit card and couldn't really pay it off. And, you know, you rescued him from the reality of life. And, you know, that's a big rescue. I think we've all been there where we do the one rescue. But if you continue to rescue, you're really inhibiting or interfering with him learning about life. We want him to meet life head on. if you don't show up for work, you lose the job. If you don't pay off the credit card, you have to start paying the expenses, and they don't up your limit. And now you're paying all these interest charges and they don't go away. People don't rescue you. He might have to learn that it takes him years to pay it off, that he has to work a third job. He'll figure it out. But we want to continue to say, hey, I love you. I'm not going to rescue you, but I can give you support. I can give you ideas. I'm sage counsel. Should you, want to pick my brain? I love you. I trust you. Those messages, those ongoing messages of having faith in children, and he's a young adult, he's adulting. It's going to look messy. I don't know if he'll learn it at 18. Some kids don't learn it till 30. It really depends on how much the parents protect him from the reality of life. But sending the message that you trust him to be a learner. You trust him to recover from mistakes, learn from mistakes. Not to avoid mistakes, but it's a growth opportunity. It's not always a bad thing. And I think we've learned a lot about that with the pandemic. A lot of us these are the moments where we're really examining things differently and growing from it. So just say, listen, I'm sorry we did our part, and, I'm sure you'll figure it out. Do you want to speak to a financial planner? Do you want to speak to one of those debt counselors? Like, I can toss out some ideas. So I think you can be emotionally supportive, but not financially supportive if he's incurred those costs.
Mm-hmm.
It's where the rubber hits the road.
I think where I'm hearing, there's a secondary part to that conversation. And I think what I'm hearing in this is that this member really feels that the importance is that he stays in school and that he's getting his education, and they're supporting him in being able to do that. So this member says he's moved out of our home. He says he's too stressed because we ask him to do basic chores, clean his room, pick up after himself, hang up his laundry after it's been washed. They pay for his gas to get to and from school. They pay for his phone. They pay for his car insurance, but they just really want him to stay in school. And that's why they are supporting him in that way. I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts about that.
Yeah, I'm guessing, and again, I don't know the whole story, and it's always hard in this format, with just these little short answers. I would dig into the whole family, how when he got his diagnosis, how discouraged he is. I would dig into a whole bunch of things if we were working one-on-one. But I think one of the things that I would say, and this is, it's a hard thing for parents to really embody, because our fear comes up. And I've had to say this so much during the pandemic with online schooling and kids, like, marks dropping 30%, kids just checking out and saying, I'm not doing it. If it's online again, I'm just not doing it. I've had more kids just refuse to, school refusal is at an all-time high. So I've been dealing with this for different reasons. And the big point that I have to get parents to understand is getting yourself educated is a child's responsibility. It's not your responsibility. We put it as what kind of parent would let their kid drop out of school? What kind of parent would let their kid not hand in an assignment? What kind of parent would, but the truth is, when you make it your goal, when you step in and start taking ownership of it, you actually make it allergic and distasteful, and kids don't step up into responsibilities that we manage. And I know you're managing it because he's got you pulled into this. I can't clean my room. I can't look after myself. I've got ASD. I've got ODD. I've got all these things. I need special dispensation. And I think in giving that special dispensation, he has learned to evade some of these basic life responsibilities, picking up. He's missing the point that that's part of being a human being. So I think that I would just say, I love you. I'm sure at some point you will figure out how to wrap up this last little bit of your education. A lot of people come into my counseling at 26 and say, I've decided I want to be a welder, but I don't have my grade 12, whatever. I have to go back, and they do night school. And so I don't know when the rubber is going to hit the road for him, but if you force him, push him, all it does is keeps that tension going. And right now what he needs is just warm, loving acceptance and faith that he will maybe go in circles for a little bit, but he'll figure himself out. Again, that's a short answer for a big thing, but that if I was working with you, I would talk to your fear. I would give you all kinds of confidences about his abilities. Like, we would work on that in a big, supportive, close way. So I'm kind of dropping a bomb on you there, I realize. But that's where I would go with it, and maybe in more baby steps. But it's his job to get himself educated.
Mm-hmm. Um, we have another question saying, any suggestions for helping a child open up more to talk to this person? My daughter is in middle school, will be 15 months that she's been very quiet, it looks like. Will be in a, will be 15, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, will be 15 in a month and has always been very quiet. It has a lot it's a lot of work to draw things out of her. They
Yeah.
haven't found the key yet to engage her and talk to her.
Some kids are what we call low disclosers, more private. And they get more private when they become teenagers because they want more independence away from their family, and they want to try on some thoughts and behaviors kind of, that they are just experimenting with. They don't necessarily want their parents to be privy you know, where they're putting their energies and straying. So that's common in adolescence. But we do want to have that open relationship or that ability to have a dialogue with our kids. Part of it is learning that a lot of communication is about how to be a good listener. And it's not uncommon that when kids open up and talk, the typical way that we respond to our kids is that we want to help and fix and solve. So when they say, "Oh, this boy in the schoolyard pushed me," you're like, "Did you tell the teacher? Did you know what?" Like, we jump in. We don't just say like, "Oh, how did that feel? Tell me about that." And then what did you do? We don't sit and just hold this space for kids to vent into. So what ends up happening is they feel that they're interrogated. They feel that we're being judgmental, critical, too solution focused. And so then they just shut up and they don't bring us their stuff anymore. So we really have to rebuild that trust that we can just hold a space, just hold the space to listen. And you might only get one little dribble at a time. If you want kids to open up, I find that like some of the communication tips are do something at the same time. So sitting down to have a talk is usually not very effective. But if you're walking the dog or you're doing the dishes or you're raking the leaves and then you kind of toss something, because then you're driving in the car, because then, if there's like a quiet moment, you start listening to the radio or, you pick up the leaves or it doesn't feel so tense. The other thing is that some people prefer to communicate by text. That is a valid form for a teenager. If she would prefer to text with you, then text or a Google Doc. It gives them time to stop and think and compose, and they're not like sort of on the spot and worried that they're going to say the wrong thing. Some kids just need some composure time. The other thing to know is that if they need a confidant, if it's not you, which again is sort of, we want them to be the confidant. But again, if they're like, maybe they don't want to talk to you about puberty or something because it's embarrassing because you're their mom. But then you say, who would you talk to? And you might just find some safe adult. Is it a teacher at school, a coach? Is it an aunt, an uncle, a grandma, a neighbor, somebody that they can identify? And they should certainly have the text number to Kids Help Phone, 686868. Text, that's the phone number, the text connect 24/7. They answer all kinds of questions. They answer like, how do I calculate my bra size? How do I put a tampon in? I found my brother's vape pen. Should I tell my parents? I don't want to break my relationship with him. They get all kinds of questions. So kids need to know that they're text support people 24/7, and it's 100% anonymous, and they can ask any question of any size. So at least you've kind of got somebody who's that support person rather than just a peer, because peers give crappy advice. So just keep working on it bit by bit. And I think the other thing too is that we know that low disclosers, if they disclose it in writing, like journaling, they never have to read it again. They can burn it up after. But we know from research that journaling your thoughts and emotions reduces suicidal ideation in university students, brings down blood pressure, increased lifespan. Because when you change your emotions into language and then you do the act of writing it, not typing it, writing it, it has to go be translated into muscle. That process changes where it goes in the brain, and it gets it out of perseveration. It helps us with emotional regulation, and we solve problems better, and they don't have to tell the person at all. So if she won't talk, get her journaling.
As you touched a little bit on cell phones, there is a question in here. One of our members is wondering if you could maybe touch on cell phones and social media time in reference to older children and teens. If you could specifically talk about controlling that time and consequences, as it's a very big trigger for conflict in their home.
Absolutely. We can't use the removal of tech as a consequence for you're rude, I'm taking away your phone. You're not doing your homework, I'm taking away your phone. It doesn't relate. It's going to come down to being punitive. And I've worked with kids, and what they'll do is they will seek revenge on you. I've had kids that steal their parents' power cord so that when you have to log on for your Zoom meeting with your boss and you run out of power, your kid doesn't give you back your power cord because you've taken away their phone. I've had kids run away from home, get on buses, go across provinces. You don't want to mess with a kid that is angry at you because you're taking away their tech. You want to work with them to use tech in a way that enhances their enjoyment of life, that allows them to have a life the way that they consciously are creating life for themselves. So these are conversations about balance. These are conversations about mental health. These are conversations about artificial intelligence and the ability for the art of persuasion to put images in front of your mind that change the way you think about yourself and others. One of the great resources that you can share with your older teens is the website, the Center for Humane Technology. They are the people that created the documentary, The Social Dilemma. They have since broken down that documentary into more bite-sized pieces with student and parent and teacher support questions, kind of like your book club might have those provocative questions, so that you can look at it together so that kids understand, oh my God, I am being manipulated. And they may not see it in terms of like their thought about, anorexia or cutting, romanticizing cutting or whatever, but maybe they can see it in terms of what happened with the US election and how it's eroding democracy and how it's creating a great divide between vaxxers and anti-vaxxers and fake news. And you can use other maybe less, as exciting, but maybe less close to making them feel attacked about their usage and behavior, et cetera. So I think those are really provocative media questions for digital literacy to have with their kids. And, get them debating, get them learning, show them what you're learning, get them to track their mood. The first thing that happens when kids come into a psychiatric ward because they've had some kind of breakdown, whether it's anxiety, panic attacks that are unstoppable, or depression, suicidality, eating disorders, when they get admitted, their phones get taken away. And none of them like it, but they know it's the hospital rule. So they hand over their phones. And they all say after 24, 48 hours, I didn't like it, but do I ever feel better? I'm not twingy the way I used to be. That's not because of the medication, and they're not getting good sleep on a psych ward. But there's often kids who really haven't had a digital detox to even remember what it's like to not be checking in. So it's about doing these little experiments. Do you feel? I know nobody wants to go for a walk outside, but when you do, when you came back, did you feel better? What was your mood on a scale of 0 to 10? So just start talking about how to use tech as a life enhancement and not to get hooked into this attention-seeking device that's going to pull you down a rabbit hole and create more negative emotion than positive. Take you away from your bigger goals. Like, you do want to be a scholar and you are proud of your schoolwork, and now you're kind of scrambling to get it all done before bedtime. So it's just a lot of conversations, a lot of reflecting, asking them to have some agency, getting them to do some experiments. And some kids will say, would you help me with this? And you might say, would it be helpful if I took your phone in the evening? Would you like it if I sat with you during homework time? Would you find it better if I turned the Wi-Fi off, for an hour while it's homework time? How can I be supportive around your goals? But as an older teenager, you just step in and take measures into your own hands, and they don't get the kindness that you're trying to show them, you're just going to start a fight. If you've got young people coming on board, 10, 12 years old, and you lay down the rules from the beginning and you say, phones get docked at night, doors are always open, then the expectation is laid down. But if you've been kind of the Wild West and now you're suddenly getting firm, that's a lot harder to go back on that.
Mm-hmm. Somebody's asking what your thoughts are about kids using electrical communications versus verbal communications, and what some impacts on their social development may be.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that in real life interactions are fundamentally different than virtual. there literally is a chemical experience that happens between two people in real life. You're just like when you see girls in dorms, they'll all start menstruating on the same cycle. Or, men's testosterone will go up when they're in the presence of women. That our dopamines and our mirror neurons, when our brains are connecting, there's all kinds of things that happen with physical presence that doesn't happen in real life. Having said that, look what we're doing. This is a whole lot better than us not getting together. So I think that there is a place for sure for this. And like I was saying before, even this happens in marriages. Sometimes there's somebody that is more verbally dominant and they will win every argument because they can outtalk the other person. And if you don't have verbal communication skills, you're at a loss. So sometimes that having the Google document or being able to text, slowing it down, being more considered, sometimes that puts them on a better playing field to have a better conversation than they might have in person. So we need to have both. When you're texting, you can often miss the nuances. How many misunderstandings have there been where I thought you were giving me attitude. Like I use KK. My kids told me, Mom, when you do KK is dismissive. KK is rude. I'm like, it is? I didn't know KK was rude. I'm so glad you told me. I can use a different symbol. A lot of parents use emoticons and a lot of their little animation GIFs as a way to lighten the mood. So if you're going to tell your kid to go clean their room, to have one of those stupid little mom icons with the little laundry basket and the, hey, clean your room, or the little poo emoji. Oh, I'm going to be a poo. Don't you think it's time for homework? Like that can be humorous, and it's sort of meeting kids in their world, meeting kids where they're at. So I think if you're just judicious and you use your tools in a way that supports each of those types of interactions. But no, if you've got kids where all they do is live online in their gaming world and they're not seeing their friends that are in their classroom or living on the block, you're going to have to encourage them to get out. And everyone is rusty. It's not just your kid. Adults are rusty. Like I have a lunch date on Friday and I'm kind of like, I'm like, it's not that I'm afraid of the pandemic. It's like I'm literally so in my little vibe. It's like what inertia. It's like I'm home. I stay home. I'm in inertia. It's like we got to remember what it's like to go out. We got to remember to get out there. And for kids that need to figure out the social hierarchies, who's in what clique, who's got status, like all of that has come down since the pandemic. And the classrooms are back, but you're not allowed to hang out in the halls. You can't hang out in the lunchrooms. Like they haven't reestablished the little try. Like it's still a little bit random. So we got to kind of push our kids into their uncomfort zone as best we can.
Okay. We are hitting 11 o'clock.
Oh.
That seems like it just flew by so quickly. I think we have hit on most of the questions that have come into the question and answers. It does look like there's a few that are paired very similar. So you were answering one question as another one was coming in, and I think those answers are kind of, you can generalize them over the two topics. So,
well, Teresa, can I just share for people that still have questions, and new ones are going to come up. I hope. I mean, the parenting's not done. Let me just share my screen if I can here. I don't want advanced sharing options. I just want to let people know that I have a podcast called Parenting the Adlerian Way. There's two formats. One is you email me your question. So if you didn't get your question answered today, or you've got a new one, email me your question and I will answer it anonymously on one of my podcasts. And you can go to Apple or Spotify and go back through. I list the questions. There might be one I've already answered that's similar to yours. So lots of resources there. But I also interview other experts and authors as well. I also do a live Facebook Live every Thursday that you can ask questions. I'm switching them from noon to 7 p.m. for February. And they're archived, so you can check those out too. But that's for asking questions too. And that's all free and open to the public. And I have a teen Facebook group if you just have teen issues, because that's a whole other animal. So that's a free discussion group as well. And people share resources and give you ideas to one another there too. And then here's my social handles and my book cover. So follow me, Alyson Schafer, on any of the social handles. I put up tips and advice and stuff all the time. So I hope this made you curious about Adlerian psychology and all the different resources and methods of handling some of these hot spots today. And I appreciate everyone for being willing to put your questions up. I hope it was helpful.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming. I know that I've learned a tremendous amount. I've thoroughly enjoyed the hour that I've spent with you, and I will absolutely follow you.
Great.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a great day, everybody.
I want to thank everybody else too for your time and participation today, and encourage you to take the steps needed to keep mentally and emotionally fit and well. Thank you so much. I hope we see everybody back here next month. If you have any questions, any concerns, anything that you would like to connect with us about, you can always call the Encompas line as well at 1-866-794-9117. Thank you and have a great day, everybody.